This is a production of Cornell University.
We're going to finish off soil erosion because I want to start on soil quality. And today we're going to be sort of talking about some of the, when we get into soil quality, we're going to be talking about some of the things that we as a planet are going to be facing. But let's finish off on soil gravity, and then we'll transition into soil gravity, into to erosion, gravity erosion, and then we'll transition into soil quality. So this is where I was basically, I ended on last Monday. And so we've been talking about wind erosion and water erosion. The last of the large erosion components is gravity. And it's basically the mass movement of material due to the forces of gravity. When we see really rapid ones, this is what we call landslide. But generally, most of us are seeing, actually most of us don't even pay attention to this, but most of us experiencing this all the time. And this is basically soil creep, where it's slow and constant. Slowly things move down slope, okay? It's usually assisted by water because of issues of friction. The water basically decreases the holding capacity of friction. And so as a result, with the increased weight of the water in the soil, you have increased weight, less friction, and you'll have slides. Okay, it's favored by steep slopes as well as layered soils, soils that have high water capacity versus and are slowly draining versus soils that have low water capacity and are quickly draining. A good example of this, most of you have probably driven from here up to Syracuse, and you go up into the dry. We've talked about the dry Finger Lake that's up there, where the valley gets really steep. Okay, it was at one period of time a big lake, and you can imagine as a lake, as you see around here, different soil textures are going to be laid at different locations. So if here's the lake, if you're looking up the soil valley, okay, here's the lake, and the lake starts up here. There's going to be a lot of wave action up here. So as a result, you're potentially going to be getting sandier soils along these edges, right? Does that make sense? Okay. But depending upon where in the lake you are or the activity at that lake, what you're going to see is you're going to see layers of materials up here. You're going to have sand lenses covered up by clay lenses, and then another sand lens, and then clay lenses. And it's all due to really this angle of the slope of the lake and the edge of the lake. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? Okay. Sooner or later, the lake is going to disappear. And what's going to happen is you're going to have these slopes at the edges that are going to be literally layers of sand with coatings of clay over them, and then another layer of sand and a coating of clay. And these are the banks of our Finger Lakes. Okay? Now, what's going to happen when it starts raining? Well, the water is going to come in, it's going to infiltrate, and it's going to preferentially go down all of these. Okay? And what's going to happen is these sand lenses are going to build up a lot of water in them. And if there's a clay lens on top of it, this clay lens is basically going to seal that sand lens, right? And so in essence, if I punctured this right here, the clay lens, I'd have an artesian effect. Makes sense? Okay. Well, what's going to happen if I don't puncture that? Okay. I have this sand lens that's sort of pushing up against the clay, and then the clay also gets saturated. So the clay is heavier, and there's less friction with the sand lens below because the water is sort of pushing it up. What's going to happen? You're going to have a catastrophic flow. Okay. Now, when you guys go up to Syracuse next time, take a look for the Tully exit. Okay. And when you come up to the Tully exit, what you're going to do is you're going to be starting to go uphill. Okay. Look across the valley onto the other side, and you can see the side of the hills. And this has happened a lot of times, but about 10, maybe 15 years ago, probably longer than that, there was a really catastrophic slide where the entire hillside just basically slid off. Okay, and it took out a house, and it also buried a car. A guy saw this slide coming, and he got into his van and basically drove as fast as he could, but the slide just basically buried the van, and he's ending up standing on top of the van waiting for rescue. It was this type of an event. It's sort of like a mini Lahar type of an event. Okay, but this was due to a number of factors. Part of it was management, where up here we were all farming, okay, and we'd cut the tops so water was going down, okay. The history of the Finger Lake And then it was a period of time that we had had a lot of rain for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that was just the ideal situation for this to happen. I did put this little component in here as well. This is, if you think about this sort of Lahar type of effect or this slide type of effect, anything that's going to sort of either puncture or stabilize that boundary is going to hold the soil more in place. Okay. Now, and it doesn't have to be this specific type of a scenario where you're looking at laminar lenses of different soil material. Okay. If I have anything that is going to stabilize the soil, like roots, or reduce the amount of water that's moving into the system, i.e. evapotranspiration, I'm going to reduce the amount of erosion, or gravity erosion, or landslides. Does that make sense? Let's get this. The last section of this erosion lecture was really about physical degradation. You know, when we're talking about erosion, we're often talking about just the material moving, but there are incipient conditions and management things that we do that actually encourage or discourage this erosion. 3 methods of basically reducing compaction. Okay, compaction would if I compact a soil, what am I going to be doing to infiltration rates? I'm going to be reducing it. Okay, so if I want to reduce the amount of overland flow of water, I want to increase infiltration. So let's think about compaction. I put less mechanical weight on top. Okay, get the machines off the top. Okay, I reduce the number of traveling trips across, whether it's a machine or it's a person or anything like that. The classic example here is the desire lines that are out in the ag quad. Okay, and also I keep off the soil when it's wet. Why would I want to keep off the soil when it's wet? The same reason why erosion, gravity erosion, is increased when it is wet, when soils are wet. Why? Wetness reduces the amount of friction, which makes it easier to compact. Make sense? Okay. We can reverse compaction, but in many cases the reversal process basically actually really moves the compaction. Certainly when you have surface compaction, you go in there with deep tillage or something like that and break up the surface, but often with that type of operation, you're actually increasing compaction down below, deeper down. Okay, this is the sort of the plow layer type of effect. Crusting can also be reduced by, in fact, plowing. We can, in fact, go in there and break it up, but if we put in too much plowing, we're in essence going to be moving that compaction farther down. Okay, adding some sort of flocculant, something to break things up, and then also mulches. Mulches do this in a number of different ways. Certainly, if I put a mulch on, we're going to reduce the amount of rainfall that's going to be pounding on top of the soil and reducing the breaking up of the aggregates. But also, if I put mulches in there, I'm also encouraging more moisture in the system, more biological activity, and as a result, I'll have more aggregate stability or aggregate creation and ultimately aggregate stability.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.